As of 12 hours ago, we finally ended up going around and defeating the dragon enough times that we have our 4 cardinal portals so that we can start getting some void farms set up. Now, I'm not going to worry about that part just yet because I've got to look into the new updated ways to get that to work. I believe they changed in 1.14, and the last time I checked one was 1.13. So there's a little bit of research I have to do on that front. However, after the chaos that was today's stream, which the VOD will be linked in the description, we have a bit of a mess to clean up thanks to, for the most part, TechnoGustav. So we're going to be doing that, as well as I'm likely going to be finishing up attacking the dragon so that we can get all of them done and getting a basic ring for these guys so we can always find a way out to the outer islands. I'm going to be going over some of the plans for how we're going to trick these guys as well after I get that research done, and I'll be linking the sources and videos that I'm using for that in the description as well. So now I get to clean up TechnoGustav's mess so that we don't have like the aftermath of a war sitting here. Okay, well that took a little bit longer than I expected. So first and foremost, thank you TechnoGustav for the mess. That was the easy part though. I went around and I actually ended up going ahead and generating all of these exit gateways that take us to the outer islands. And after that, it got really fun. It turns out, since 1.14.1, I think, if I remember the bug report correctly, there's an issue with how these portals generate, and I'm going to try and demonstrate that a little bit here. Let's go ahead and open up my mini HUD thing here. We're going to disable all of these guys, and I'm going to get a little bit of a circle here. I'm going to set it here. I'm going to go down by 1 block. And we're going to start with a radius of 8. Now, this is how it should be by default. So what we're going to do is we're going to mark the center of each of these, as well as we're going to say that we want this spot on either of these. Let's say this is how the portals would normally generate. We've got this center point and then 8 blocks in each direction, and we are rounding to the center of every block, okay? Now if I go back to my like little shape here, and I change where it is rounded to, you can see that in some places the shape has changed. So now if I'm rounding up to where it's on the corner, the new center doesn't quite exist. So now here we'd be going there or here, depending on where that wants to round to. Here we'd be going there. Here, this spot doesn't even exist, so we'd be going there. Here we'd be going there. So it doesn't quite match like it used to, and they're not going to be consistent. There's even a third rounding method that we can use, which is none, which is going to put them all in a completely different space again. And that's exactly what it's done. So essentially, I spent 2.5 hours changing these outer rings that I had set up, trying again and again and again to get this circle preview to line up with the bottoms of these gateways. to where I could have the consistent circle all the way around, where we could have like a proper pathway between them. But no matter how hard I tried, it looked janky, and I could not get the circle to pass consistently underneath all of the portals. So I looked for a bug report, which is also linked in the description along with all of the other mess, and actually found the issue. Now, I've also looked into some of the sources for how the portals generate, and it's actually a lot simpler than I thought. So we should be fairly easily able to get things done. Now, the way that it works is it goes out from this gateway and goes out to a specific coordinate, like all the way out where the end islands are supposed to start. I think it's 1024 if I remember correctly. Oh, Mr. Anger's back. And then it looks back until it finds a piece of endstone. Generally, it finds it instantly, but if you've ever seen like one of the exit gateways generate on like one of those little islands, sometimes it lands in the void and then generates back. And that's what we want to do. What we need to do is at each cardinal entry, we need to mine all the endstone out within a certain radius of 1024 and then generate a platform or build a platform all the way back until we want the portal to generate. And then we can go as low as y equals 30 for the portal to be there. And what that lets us do is have really, really intensive farms with a pre-built perimeter. So things like villager trading halls, which we're not going to do because we already have one. And I don't think we can do that anymore because there's no daylight cycle in here. So villager trading farms before 1.15, and then we would have a sheep farm, which would be perfect for out here. Things like grass farms, things that can be massive, but can cause issues when you've got other things going around. As well as an Enderman farm, which I really want to get rid of this mess that's over here. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to have 4 places out in the middle of the void with perimeters that we can build really cool looking farms. So what we're going to do next is go out to one of those locations and figure out exactly what we need to do. Now, again, the sources that I'm using to do this, if you want to understand it in a little bit more detail and verify that I have the correct numbers, are going to be in the description. So if you want to check that out, it'll be down there. And I will see you down at the north portal, which is in that direction. And here we are. So I made a couple of wrong assumptions. First of all, I can't go back as far as I want. I can only go back by 256 blocks. So we can only go back to 768, if I remember correctly. However, we can also only go forward by 256 blocks. So I'm personally curious what happens if I remove all the endstone in front and there's no endstone behind. Like, what is it gonna do? There is endstone up here, like within 256 blocks. It's just quite far away. I think we'd actually end up like spawning here, which would kind of suck. But this is kind of an unfortunate spawn because it's quite far away before the main islands start. However, from here we can go back. The other incorrect assumption I made is that I would need endstone going all the way back. So I ended up mining all of this shulker box of endstone and like these 3 or so stacks. And I was going to come all the way back with endstone, but I don't need that. So I just went back and grabbed 2 shulker boxes of cobblestone, and we're going to use that to go over and set this up. Now we have to do a 2 wide path here, and in the video that I'm going to be linking from Gnembon from 2016 when 1.9 released, he had to use the chunk coordinates, which are, I'm going to highlight this on screen, these values here. However, we have this amazing little overlay now in vanilla that allows us to view a like chunk grid, which I'm going to use this instead. But the game will choose one of these 4 chunks to start searching on and then go back from there. And then it'll choose another set of 4 chunks to stop. So then we're going to set our 4 endstone there for it to pick its location at Y40. Now, the bottom of the island has to be at Y30, but it'll put it 10 blocks above. So that works out perfectly. Now, once we're down there, we're set. Like, it's gonna find the end zone, it's gonna put the portal up there, and we're golden. So I'm gonna go around and set all of these up, and we're gonna test the north portal first before I go ahead and do the other three, just so I know if I did something wrong, we're good. And I'm gonna run it back up first, because I really don't want to break this. You can't reset the end portals once you do that without editing NBT data, and I'm not super comfortable with that. So we're just gonna run a backup, and if all else fails, I'll just revert the world because I don't want to like destroy things. I'll see you soon. Okay, and we are back. We've got the entire platform placed out here. Sadly, one block higher than Gnembon did in the video, so we're gonna have our portal at Y41 instead of Y40, but that's fine. It's still going to be beautiful. And we've got all of these sorted out. And you can see that once again, we're in the middle of one of these like chunk quadrant thingies, or like chunk convergence. So we've got each of these set up two, or like the one block in from each corner. And it's going to randomly choose one of these based on how it rounds. Again, the game has to deal with rounding issues, just like how we dealt with those portals. Which, by the way, I think I forgot to mention this. I went through and shifted all of the portals around to their correct locations. I tested it; it worked fine, so they're in the right spots now. I think I forgot to mention that earlier. So these are all set up now, and we should be good to give this a test. Now I'm going to go ahead and start flying back towards the main island here, and I want to discuss a little bit about how this is going to work out. Now there are 4 locations that we can easily do this in, and only 4 that we fully planned for. Now, I have had to reset those portals before because we had issues with it on Capecraft. So it is entirely possible to do, but I don't think I'm going to bother with it because it's just kind of messy. However, this first one down the north portal, we're definitely going to do a, what is it called? An Enderman farm because we desperately need a good one. Our current one sucks and is super dangerous. If we could get one all the way out there, we would be golden. Let me go ahead and turn off the chunk boundaries here. Now that we're out here, let's pull these off, and I'm going to break this with my fist, because I want to be the first person to go through here. Okay, here we go. Hey! It worked! Check it out! Okay, we get to do that 4 more times, or 3 more times. Okay, so we're going to have 4 public farms set up here. And the idea is that, like I said, and like Gnembon said, the farms will be much more efficient putting them out in the void. Now we're going to have the Enderman farm, and I'm thinking a large sheep farm for all of the different colors of wool. Beyond that, the only thing I can think of is a grass farm, but that means we've got a 4th spot that can be used for something, and I'm not sure what. Maybe a tree farm, like a really, really big one that can do different types of trees, but I don't know. So we need to figure something out, but it can also just kind of sit there for a while because there doesn't need to be something there. It really can just be, hey, this is an open spot for when we find a good farm to do. Now, the other thing is these areas can be chunk loaded. So I'd kind of like to be able to put 2 farms at least that can be chunk loaded. The Enderman farm and the sheep farm can't be. Neither can the grass farm because they all rely on random ticks. It'd be kind of neat to be able to have something that's sitting there running all the time and can deal with its own overflow. So maybe we should skip the grass farm since it needs a player there anyway? I don't know. I'd be interested to hear some feedback on that, and I might start a Reddit thread about it too. But for right now, I want to get these set up. So I'm going to go around. I'm going to get all 4 of those platforms together since it looks like I did it perfectly. And we'll get that going, and then we'll activate all 4 portals, and that'll be it. We'll have it done, and we'll have our farm areas, and it'll be absolutely beautiful. See you in a minute. Okay, well, we had 2 extremes today. On one hand, we had like the location just in the pure void, And on the other hand, I basically have to mine through half an island. Now, if I understand things correctly, I only have to mine out this strip, but I have to mine it down to the void. So I'm looking at mining out a few thousand blocks here. On the plus side, that means I get a ton of endstone. On the downside, I'm probably going to be here for an hour or two. So this is going to take a little bit longer than I thought it would, which is fine. It's going to be worth it in the end. But here I thought I'd spend, 15, 20 minutes flying around, building them out. Because, those two platforms, they only took, I say about 5 minutes each. I got this one, or I got the north one and the south one done. Now I'm over at the east, and then the last one's the west. I have no idea how the west one looks. I'm hoping it's not like this. The east one was about the same. Or the south one was about the same. I had to mine out like one of these smaller islands, which is no big deal. Like it took 4 minutes tops. This is going to take at least an hour. So, I'm not going to pester you guys with any more updates. I'm going to mine this out, listen to some podcasts, some audiobooks, and just vibe out, and then I will see you guys later. Okay, this guy's mad. And 1 hour later, I feel like an absolute moron. So I went back and I watched the video from Gnembon again, and this time a little bit slower. And I realized he actually mentioned what to do if you're in a situation like this, where the island is at like 1024. And he specifically says that you don't have to worry. Just like start your platform at like the end of the island and it'll continue to move backwards. However, I clung on to the point where he said, don't build your platform with endstone. And I thought, oh, that means that since there's endstone here, I have to get rid of all of the endstone. So I'm assuming the reason that you could not build your platform with endstone is that once it reaches the end of your platform, you want to make sure that the like actual exit gateway ends up specifically over one of the coordinates you want. Now, I did want to take this opportunity, even though I said I was not going to bother you guys again, to talk about something that's really cool here that I actually really like with the whole situation that like allows for this, other than like me not catching on to how it actually works. And that is how this is actually calculated. So I talk a lot about how processes can be really cool and how it can actually tend to be a barrier for me when it comes to developing certain things because how you calculate the position of something or how you're going to store the data for something can be really complicated. In this case, when the exit portal is generated, the game has to make a decision as to where it goes. And when Mojang was looking at developing the mechanic, they were thinking, okay, when the portal is generated and when the player exits the portal, we want it to be on the first island. And well, you might think at first you want to go from the portal that's on the main island and go outwards from the main island and land on the first island that you find because that's how it appears. But how it appears isn't the most efficient way to do it, because now you're checking every single block between the main island and the outer islands for endstone, when under normal circumstances, there won't be any endstone between those 2 points at all. You don't need to check 99% of those blocks. So what it does instead is it checks a median point first and says, okay, there should be an island here. And if there isn't, I want you to go forward and then backwards to figure out where the first empty chunk is. So if it spawns in an empty chunk, it goes forwards and then thinks, okay, where's the first chunk that has blocks in it? Also, I've gone a little bit too far back. Where's the first empty chunk? Sorry, where's the first chunk that has blocks in it? And if it finds it, it's like, okay, where's the closest block? Where's the closest block that is endstone? As it gets more precise, it does more expensive checks. It doesn't just check for a chunk with blocks. It doesn't just check for the end stone. It checks for the empty chunk, which is cheap. It checks for the existence of a block, which is cheap. Then it checks for the type of block, which is more expensive. Then it checks for the specific location of that type of block, which is even more expensive. If you're having to do that for every block in every chunk all the way back, that just gets way too expensive to be worth it. So as you're going through, you just make your checks less and less expensive and more expensive as you get more precise. And that is where the beauty of proper data storage and efficiency lies. If you're not doing that, then your game is just going to be crashing from using too many resources just constantly because you're never going to have enough to do everything that you want. And because of that, when you're going and developing something, especially for a game like Minecraft that already struggles with some of that stuff, you're going to need to really focus on that. And that's one of the reasons why I'm struggling to figure out exactly how I want to handle that spectator plugin that I'm wanting to do, because I'm not sure how I need to store the current state and location of the player, because I need some specific outputs from it and I like some others, but it's going to be a balance between how long I can store the data, how long storing the data is going to be efficient, and how easy it is to store that data as far as development goes. And I'm looking at different storage options for what I can do with that. But the process here is really cool because, yeah, it's standard, sure, but you're not really going to think about it when you look at it. To the normal player, it looks like the portal was just generated by drawing a line between the portal you entered and the closest bit of land. But if, like, the base, it's not. It's generated by looking backwards. And that is really cool. That is so much cooler than I even have words for. And that is why I really like processes and just general development. Because that's just amazing. Okay, 1024. Looks like we're over in the void today, so that's going to be nice and easy. We're getting down to Y30 is going to be a little bit hard. So we're looking at here then. Oh no, that's nice. Okay. So, yeah, it's one of those things that has always been fascinating to me about how games and programs in general are done, because you're going to have a different output than the math that you're already doing, because different types of math are actively more or less efficient than others. And that means that when the player or the user of the program actually interacts with it, they're going to have a slightly different experience than how you're actually developing it. And that's one of those really awkward things to wrap your head around at first, because it doesn't look like that. Every time you've ever interacted with a program, you're not interacting with the proper math, the math that's being done. You're interacting with the output of that math, which isn't apparent in the slightest. You're never going to be able to see the math that is being done by interacting with the actual program unless you're doing extensive testing. I don't know if they did the testing or if they did like code decomposition when they did this in 2016, Gnembon and the SciCraft crew, because they tend to do a mix of both. But what I do know is that this math would not be apparent to the average player. They would not see this. They generate all of the portals just like normal, and it would look like it just drew a line from the portal they entered and the portal that they exited and found the first bit of land. Because that's how the math was designed, to appear like that, but do it in the most efficient way. What's even cooler is each step is very specific. So it starts at 1024. If that chunk is empty, it goes forward. If that chunk is not empty, it goes backwards. But it doesn't go backwards block by block. It goes backwards by a full chunk until it finds the chunk that is not empty. When it finds a chunk that is not empty, it goes and finds the specific block in that chunk that is not empty. And then once it finds that block, it then figures, okay, which block in here is not end stone and which is the closest to 0, 0. And that's the amazing part, because every step of the way it gets more specific and more expensive. And that's exactly how you should design those kinds of checks. You shouldn't do it any differently. What's more annoying about that is that Mojang kind of fails to do that a lot of the times, especially when it gets to complicated things. I've said this before, but the best example I'm aware of is when they added fish to the game, and the fish started by doing a really expensive AI task. First tick, same tick that they spawned in, but then the next tick is when they despawned because they are outside of the actual intended spawn range. So they would spawn, do their expensive entity calculation task or pathing calculation task, and then they would despawn. So they were taking a ton of computing resources just by despawning. That is the kind of thing that can get super, super expensive if you make a slight mistake. I mean, granted, the portal calculations, they don't need to be that efficient. They're only done 20 times in the entire length of a world at maximum. And people aren't likely to do that in every single world. 69, okay. Or 68. So I don't think that's like entirely needed to be that efficient, but it's really cool that they did because that kind of math I really enjoy. Figuring that out, looking at how you can be efficient, looking at how you can get it to be your intended result without brute forcing it. That is, in of itself, an art. Figuring out exactly what you need and working backwards instead of going, oh, I wanted to do this, so then I'll just have it do that. Have it do the expensive way, because it's the simple way that my human brain, that is not designed to do math, can see. Like, if I had to do that in the real world, that's exactly what I'd have to do, because I don't know what's in front of me. But the game can. The game can easily do that. But the world can't. I can't like go, okay, I've got a string. I need to figure out what's in front of my string. So let me just like throw the string forward and then figure out where it lands and then pull it back or forward to figure out where like my actual like block lies or my intended target or destination lies. Okay, we're in the correct spot. Cool beans. Seems to have spawned in a little bit of a weird location though, which is fine. Like I said before, there's some rounding weirdness with some of these things. But either way, like there's differences between how you can do math in a game or a computer program and what you can do in the real world. And that means our brains aren't evolved or aren't developed because your brain develops as you interact with the real world to actually do that kind of math, to start with that assumption. So when you get into development, it's something that you kind of have to relearn how to do, unless you've been developing from a young age, is to think about how that math can be done efficiently, even if it's contradictory to how the real world works. Because the real world, you generally do have to go about things brute force wise. If I want to figure out exactly how close I am to something and how I can get there efficiently, I have to travel there, measure the distance, and then go backwards and figure out, okay, well, now I have to go down another path and figure out how efficiently I can get there. Pathing algorithms are a whole, like, subset of data science. And this isn't even a pathing algorithm. This is just, okay, where's the closest point on this like random line? And that's as simple as it gets. Like, also, I'm realizing I can just go back through this portal. I can't believe it took me so long to realize that. Okay, so we've got west, south, I think is done. No, south is not done. That'll be the last one then. This isn't even a pathing algorithm. It's just measure this unknown distance and then generate something there. That's all it is. But it could easily be done super inefficiently, and inefficiently to the point where there could be a decent amount of lag. But watch how quickly it takes for this to generate. It is sub half second. I wouldn't doubt that this is like 10 milliseconds or something. Boom, I'm there. That fast. It took longer to load the chunk than it took to find the location of this portal. If it had to check every block between here and this portal, it would take way, way longer than that. Like seconds even. Because it would have to load every chunk and check every block in that chunk rather than doing it this efficient way. And that's really cool because that is how they designed those functions in the game. That's how they figured out the math to work. They went through and said, okay, well, what's the least amount of effort that we can do based on the way that our game is designed, based on how we're storing the data, based on the data that we need, and based on the outcome that we want, right? So they've got these functions that can say, is chunk empty? Okay. Does chunk contain XYZ block? Where is XYZ block in chunk? Is block XYZ? So is block endstone? Is block stone? Is block cobblestone? It's that simple. So when they go through and they think, okay, is chunk empty? Yes, move on to next chunk. Is chunk empty? No. Okay, does chunk contain endstone? Yes. Where does chunk contain endstone? Here. Is here above Y30? Yes. Generate exit gateway 10 blocks above here. And as you go through, those functions or methods become more and more costly and more specific. And that is the amazing part of all of this. And that's why I really like the way that Minecraft works. Yeah, it is very emergent, but because it's so emergent, Mojang has to spend a lot of time sitting down and figuring out exactly how and where they need to make things very efficient. Yes, they probably didn't need to make these portals as efficient as they are. You could spend 1 or 2 seconds doing that calculation and nobody would care. It takes, like, you only need to do it 20 times and then it's done. These things have their location set, they won't be changed. But since they made it so efficient, we can do this. We can move these portals to the location that we want, and it will always work. Every time. We have it down to a science because Mojang defined that science. And that is the amazing part, even though I'm dumb and managed to make the wrong assumption when the information was handed to me on a silver platter. So if there's anything to take from my rant, always be willing to learn and don't be afraid to slow down the video because you don't know how to listen. Now, we've got all of these set up, and like I mentioned earlier, if you've got any suggestions for farms, let me know, because I really do want to have at least 2 that we can chunk load. We can't do anything with villagers in here because there's no daylight cycle at all. So they won't like do their work cycles, they won't spawn golems. So we can't do a trading hall, and we can't do like an iron farm or anything like that. And the only thing that spawns in here are these guys. Now, eventually, we could do a shulker farm in here, which would be pretty cool. So we might end up leaving one of those open for a shulker farm when 1.17 releases. But that means we still do have at least 1, maybe even 2. So I will see you guys in the next video or the next stream, depending on which comes out first. And we'll hopefully be working on one of these farms soon. I at least want to get the Enderman farm done. So have a nice night, and remember to enjoy yourselves, because that's always important. Okay, I just wanted to give a little bit of an update at the end for those of you who stayed this long. I am still relatively sick. I've been getting a little bit better as I'm learning to manage it, but at the end of the day, I really just don't want to sound like a broken record, so I haven't been talking about it much in streams or in Discord, because it's just a lot of the same symptoms. Haven't been able to stay awake, dealing with some temperature issues, just major things that are disrupting my life's workflow. And because of that, I wasn't able to get any videos out this past month, and my streams have, of course, been suffering as well. I'd planned, as those of you who are keeping up with the patron posts, to have a video out within the first week of last month, and I didn't. Now, like I said, I am starting to manage things a little bit better, so hopefully I can start keeping up with this. This is going to be my first actual video on the subserver since I planned to start this almost 3.5 months ago. So I'm hoping now that I've got the ball rolling, I can keep going with this. But again, I'm still sick and I still don't have everything pinned down. So if you want to keep up with things, I'll still be in Discord, I'll still be streaming, but I don't want to sound like a broken record, so I'm not going to be posting updates about it all the time. Either way, thank you to everybody who has been supporting me and keeping up with me over the past few months, because it means more than I even know how to say. Like I mentioned in the first video that I actually posted on the sub server, it's honestly been the only thing keeping me up and going throughout all of this. So if you are a patron, thank you. If you are a Twitch sub, thank you. And if you are just coming to streams and watching videos and interacting in Discord, thank you even more. Because honestly, if it was just the like if it was just the financial support, I don't know how much I'd be able to do here. I mean, the financial support is amazing and it's really getting me to where I can get things done. But at the end of the day, what's getting me through this right now is that everybody's here, especially the people who are like keeping on top of things and interacting with everybody. So always remember, enjoy yourselves and thank you for being you.